It's Ben Proto.
Hi, Ben. Yeah, so we want to do this right. So we are going to shift here to because we're in this diner here, which is rather noisy. So we're going to go to our private recording studio, my car. So,
I
so
know the feeling.
yeah. So did you have you spoken with Annalisa?
Yeah, she told me that you had. Hang on a second, just trying to figure out where the hell I am. Yeah, she had called me to say that you had reached out to her
Yep,
and
that's right.
have some issues with the party and me, and I
Well,
saw
I
an
think
email that went out today,
yeah, I would.
most of which is factually inaccurate, but that's
Okay,
okay. I'm used to that.
okay. Well,
But
this is the opportunity to set the record straight.
yep,
So,
go.
okay, so let's deal with the first part. Are you okay, Eric? Also, just for formality's sake, for this, since we do want to broadcast this, do you consent to this interview?
Yeah,
Okay,
I do lots of interviews. Happy to do
okay,
it.
okay. So, the first hot issue, I'll pick okay. The first one was the piece showing that nationwide, Connecticut was number 5 out of all the states in terms of trending towards Trump in the vote. And among the
Mm-hmm.
blue states, we were number 2. And I believe the number was 5.6%, whereas Massachusetts was number 1 at 6.8%.
Yep.
Okay, so you would agree that that's true?
I'll accept your numbers. I
Right.
haven't
I mean,
seen the final numbers, but I'll
I have
accept
to
your
do,
numbers.
I
Yeah.
want to go back and double check them myself. So yes. So
Yep.
the second piece reported that in this election there were 96,000 fewer Democrat votes than in the 2020 election and 16,000 more Republican votes.
Yep.
Okay, so you'd agree that that's factually correct. I mean, with the best knowledge we have
Yep.
to work with at the moment. Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so I look at those two pieces of information and say, wait a second. Now I read that we lost seats in the House, House of Representatives and the state Senate. Is that true?
Yep.
Okay, I detect a contradiction.
What's that?
I detect a contradiction.
Well,
How do
that
you?
depends.
I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. So
Because when you look at votes, so let's take 2 state rep seats out east that we lost, 2 incumbents that we lost, who I believe, if you look at the numbers, and I'd have to go back and check, so actually did better than Donald Trump did in those districts. And they were very bad districts for Republicans across the board, including the president. So there is a dynamic on the ballot. Obviously, I think we can all agree to that, where hang on a second, where the top of the ticket sometimes dictates what happens below. And in those particular, and I'll give you an example. In one of those particular races, I believe the state rep, I want to say, has 4 towns or 5 towns.
sure.
However
Right.
many towns she had,
Right.
she won all but one of the towns.
Well.
And the town that she lost, I believe she outperformed Donald Trump in, but it was a huge anti-Trump town. Has been since 2016. And so I'm not going to tell you that she lost because of Donald Trump, but I can also tell you that we had a situation where at one point she had a situation where she had posted onto Facebook a photo of her next to one of her lawn signs that was next to a Harris Walls lawn sign. And I called her and told her to take that down.
Yeah.
That you need to ensure that the Trump voters are going to be with you in your base, because we know the anti-Trump voters are not. You need to ensure the Trump voters are going to be with you, and Trump voters are, in a lot of cases, very binary in how they do things. You're either with Trump or you're not with Trump. For a lot of people. So I went to her and said, you really need to take that down. It's going to cause you a problem. In one of the other races, you had situations where candidates just didn't do what they needed to do. They didn't knock on doors. They thought that, they had this wrapped up, and they didn't do the work, and they got outworked in some cases. A lot of races, not a lot, every race that's run is decided by the candidates and who the candidates are and what kind of work they put into the race or what kind of work they don't put into the race. So that's the situation. But when we look at, for instance, in Greenwich, we were supposed to lose Ryan Fazio. That was, the Democrats had already decided they had won it. They were going to win it. And Ryan won by a pretty substantial margin, given his margin in 2022. And the Tina Corpus race, we beat out a first-term incumbent Democrat.
I know about her.
Tony Huang, right? Tony Huang was another seat that we were absolutely supposed to lose. Rob Blanchard was going to be the next senator from that district. It was a done deal. He had worked for Murphy. He had worked for Lamont. He was working for Scanlon. And he was going to be the next state senator. We put a lot of effort into that. Tony worked very hard there. He actually did what candidates are supposed to do, knocked on, tens of thousands of doors, and overwhelmingly won that race. Same thing up in Torrington. Joe Canino, a young man, took out a multi-term state rep candidate, incumbent Democrat, Michelle Cook. We did have successes in places. We had districts where we thought we were going to lose or the Democrats, I should say, thought they were going to win, where we were able to withstand that challenge and win those seats. So, it was a mixed bag. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But in many cases, it was like the two out east. It was probably the two towns that they lost have been anti-Trump towns where he's doing in the mid-30s in votes. And in a couple of other cases, just candidates just not doing the work. And so some of that, is at the end of the day, voters vote for candidates. They don't vote for the party chairman. They don't vote for the party. They vote for candidates. And if the candidate's not doing the job, it's, like Coke and Pepsi. If Coke's not out selling Coke, people are going to buy Pepsi.
Right. Well, I'm going to bring up.
And so,
okay. I want to bring up a piece of the past here. So you may remember that I believe it was 2010 was a real low for the Republican Party. We were outnumbered 3-1 in the State House. I think we had 33 seats. Fred Camillo could tell you all about it. And so that was 2010. Tea Party shows up. And then 2012, if I've got this right, we got back to being outnumbered 2-1 from 3-1. And then in 2014, we came within 12 of taking over the House. And then in 2016, we came within, I think, 6. And then Trump derangement syndrome came to town, and the rest is history as we know it. So the big question is what happened beforehand. Somehow we were gaining ground. And it's my understanding that there was a very good group in, I want to say, the Republican Legislative Office that knew how to pick candidates and knew how to pick races, and they just kept chipping away until we were really close. So that's my version of the history of it. So how we lost that, I don't understand.
And I think part of it is there was, when we look at some of the folks who had been in the House over those years in 2020 and 2022 chose not to run again. So we lost, I think we lost 2 or 3 first-term Republicans. And the most dangerous election cycle for any incumbent is their first reelect.
Okay.
That's always the most dangerous reelection that any incumbent will have. And so I think we lost, I want to say 2, possibly 3, but I know 2 for sure, who were basically first-term incumbents. And, you know, we ran into some issues with them. And, again, part of it was candidate not working. Part of it was top of the ticket, or not even top of the ticket, but ballot positions above them that, you know, they had to overcome some, you know, some above ticket issues. And those are sometimes difficult to overcome. You know, the other aspect of it is you have situations, because of CEP, you have limited amounts of funds that candidates can spend on those races.
Yeah.
And you have situations where, you know, when you have Chris Murphy, who drops almost $500,000 into the Connecticut Democrat Party to run a ground operation across the state, you know, incumbency at that level, particularly the U.S. Senate level, has certain advantages to it. He's raising money for 6 years. You know, I think we'll probably see, you know, at the, you know, when we look at the December 31st filing for Chris Murphy, he's probably going to have a few $1 million in the bank. And unlike in Connecticut, when the campaign is over, you have to close out your account and empty it out. At the federal level, they don't do that. They get to roll it over and continue to use it. So he's already starting with a multi-million-dollar advantage should he decide to run in 6 years, where our candidate doesn't. So he's raising money every day from the swamp in D.C., so you sit there with $10 or $12 million. He easily moves $500,600,000 to the Connecticut Democratic Party, who can then use it for ground game. Because remember, the only entity in the state of Connecticut that can spend unlimited amounts of money on a CEP candidate is the state party.
Okay.
Which is, you know, we were heavily invested in the Ryan Fazio race. We were heavily invested in the Tina Corpus race. We were heavily invested in Tony Fong race. We were heavily invested in the Lisa Seminara race. We were invested in the Chris Reddy race, which, as you probably know, is now looking towards probable litigation.
Probable
corner. And you know, we've been involved with the Senate Republicans in that matter. We've been involved with the Senate Republicans in the recount in the 8th district. I don't know that, you know, the recount is going to change anything. It might get it a little bit closer, but unfortunately, I think, you know, Lisa is probably going to come up short.
Okay.
So, you know, there's a substantial amount of money that was spent, you know, in a lot of races across the state.
Okay, so let me move on to some other questions here. They're going to get a little tougher. So this question is, why did you wait until 3 days before the election to officially endorse Trump?
I did, and I endorsed Trump a long time ago when I was at the national convention. I was part of the Trump platform committee floor operation. I worked throughout the cycle. Every interview that I did, I talked about Donald Trump and my support of Donald Trump. I'm regularly quoted in various news stories about Donald Trump and my support of Donald Trump and the party support of Donald Trump. So there was a statement that we put out in response to, you know, a particular news article that came out that had to do with a couple of Republicans who had made some comments about Donald Trump that I thought needed a response, that this was not what the state was not speaking on behalf. In fact, the party was fully supportive of Donald Trump, as we have been. Remember, I ran Donald Trump's campaign in 2016 in Connecticut.
Yeah.
I've you know.
Well, then there is this question: why is there this perception that you're anti-Trump?
I have no idea. I really don't. I'm
Just
not.
saying.
I was. I know. Look, people say a lot of things, Cort. People make up a lot of things. I have no idea where that came from. Because trust me if I tell you, you know, I think you've watched Donald Trump long enough, as have I. Donald Trump values one thing more than anything else: loyalty to Donald Trump. And if I were anti-Trump, I would not have been asked to have chaired the subcommittee on the Constitution for the platform committee by the Trump campaign. I would not have been asked to have been the floor manager for the Trump campaign at the platform committee's full committee meeting. I would not have been asked to have been a floor whip by the Trump campaign, and I surely would not have been asked to sit in the president's spot the night that he got nominated or accepted the nomination.
Yeah, well,
So
as
my
my
support of Donald Trump has been unwavering. I regularly was out talking about Trump, getting beat up by reporters and beat up by Democrats. In fact, if you remember, when the whole Biden-Harris situation came about, I was quoted in the Connecticut Public story about basically Kamala Harris being a DEI hire as vice president. And I had Democrats up and down just blasting me over that I was pure MAGA. And this was just BS. That how could I say that of a woman of color? I was a racist. I was misogynistic. You know, this is Donald Trump all over again. And then I had, of course, remind people that those weren't my words. Those were Joe Biden's words in 2020 when he talked about who he was going to take as the vice presidential candidate, and it had to be a black woman.
Right.
That kind of stopped them from going after me. So I have no idea where I'm anti-Trump came from. I regularly had conversations with the Trump folks. I was on calls with the Trump folks throughout the convention and leading up to the convention for various meetings on the platform. In particular, I was on the platform committee. They wouldn't have put me on the platform committee if I was anti-Trump.
Okay. Now, the next thing is this stuff about alleging Trump regretted saying fight, fight, fight. What was that all about?
I misspoke. I had done 3 or 4 interviews in a row. I had just done an interview about something that Biden had said, and the question came up. And quite honestly, I just got the 2 statements confused between the Trump statement and the Biden statement. I can tell you this.
Oh,
After I ended that interview, I called the Trump campaign, the communications team. I told them what I said. Told them if they needed me to, put a statement out, I was happy to put a statement out. Their position was, don't worry about it. It's fine. Okay. Happens. Don't worry about it.
All right. Now, there's this other thing here. See, what's this somebody gave me? Are the rumors true that Elon Musk offered the Connecticut GOP money to help with the election, but you turned it down?
No.
Okay, so that's false, you say.
Nope.
All right.
Nope.
Did Elon ever approach?
Here's the thing. The most money Elon Musk could have given the Connecticut Republican Party was $10,000.
Really?
That's the most he could by law. And his PAC.
You mean federal law?
Prohibited from giving by federal law. Correct, federal law, because it was a federal. Because he's a fed. He could have given me $15,000 on my state committee if he wanted to, assuming that he doesn't do business with. I don't know if any of his companies do business with the state of Connecticut, which would bar him from giving money. But the most he could give me on my federal account was $10,000. His PAC is we are prohibited from coordinating any efforts between his PAC and the state party. That's also a violation of federal law. Okay. So the most that Elon Musk could have given the state party, assuming he wasn't barred on the state side, was $25,000, $10,000 to the state, to the federal PAC, and $15,000 to the state PAC,
I see.
The state committee.
Okay, so then there's a little follow-up here. It says, if the rumors aren't true, then what should happen to the state central rep who started the rumor? How should the Connecticut GOP handle those?
I don't know who started the rumor. Okay. I don't know who started.
Yeah. And then this.
I'll be honest with you. Of course, this is the first time I'm hearing it. So.
Okay. Well,
I don't know where it came from.
Yeah. Well, we're all plugged into little tiny communities, all kind of, sort of overlapping each other. So. Everybody, as I tell everybody, Cort, everybody is a reporter because they have a social media account. Exactly.
Up and suddenly,
gee, I guess
the whole world. I tell everybody in the world is now a reporter.
Well,
and they can make up news stories.
Well, yeah, but they can also.
It's the first time I've heard that.
Okay, but they can also fact check too. So, now this last one here.
Well, Well, it depends. You see, fact-checking is an interesting thing, Cort.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends who you're fact-checking with. If you're fact-checking with other people who are pretending to be reporters on social media and making stuff up, are you really fact-checking, or are you just talking in a giant circle?
Well, I think yes, there will be people who will tend to repeat the same things, but because the nature of this medium, I think you will find that there are others who will offer a different point of view, and then it becomes a case of dueling narratives.
Well,
so,
right, but then who becomes the oracle of truth? It's just
well,
like...
I'm going to say I trust the public. I'm going to say that eventually, at some point, the truth will out. And I think people have an ear for what is true, and they will tend to move in that direction. That's my faith. So this last one, the Greenwich Rhino RTC, I guess that's a loaded question, just blocked the West Hartford MAGA RTC on its social media. And so this
say that again?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you broke up. I heard Greenwich RTC and then something.
Yeah, so Greenwich, here, hold on a second. Yeah, the Greenwich RTC just blocked the West Hartford MAGA RTC. And a lot of people are laughing at the RTC fighting on social media. So the question to you is, how are we going to get these RTCs to unite?
Well, that requires a couple things. One, part of the issue with the RTCs is, and this has been around for a long time. This is not a new problem.
Mm-hmm.
Our RTCs tend to be older. They tend to be, some of them are very technologically capable, understand the use of social media. Others, many of them are not comfortable with it. They don't use it. They don't know how to use it.
I would agree with that.
We have conducted numerous training programs.
Mm-hmm.
This year, let's see, this is 20, so they just got elected in 24. So this year, after the RTC chairmen were elected,
mm-hmm.
We held for the first time in my memory a RTC chair training, and we brought in close to 85 of the 169 town chairs. It was open to everybody. It was a Saturday in Bristol. We have a very friendly local craft brewer up in Bristol who opened their facility to us because they have a very large kind of tasting room.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there all day, and we did training with them on everything from how to write a press release to how to utilize social media, how to get on social media.
Mm-hmm.
You're very astute on social media. What a lot of RTCs and what a lot of people don't understand about a lot of the social media, particularly now the meta pages in particular, Facebook and Instagram, is before you can do anything very political, you have to get approved by them to do that. And in particular, to buy advertising and place advertising, you have to be approved by Meta as a political entity that they accept to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very complicated process. So much so that the most advanced technological company in the world, Meta, requires you to fill out a form that they mail to you by the U.S. mail, and for you to return it by U.S. mail to them.
Okay. Well, I mean, we may not like that, but
no, but I understand why they do it. Don't take that as a criticism. I understand why they do it, and it makes a lot of sense. But when I talk to people and when we sit down and try to, work with them and train people, they say, I don't understand. Why do I have to do this? Why can't I just do this online?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, there's a reason for it, and it's to ensure certain security levels.
Mm-hmm.
But,
right.
People start posting things on Facebook and social media, and suddenly their accounts get shut down. And they call us going, my account's shut down. I go, well, that's because you're not approved. Remember we talked about that? Well, yeah, but I didn't think I understand that, but this is what they want. So we're continually trying to do more training with the chairs and some of the leaders in the RTCs. I'm trying to get my state central members, and we've begun to do it. We've had a few of them, and I'm hopefully going to get more. where the state central members will bring their town chairs together from their district. So it's not, 80 or 90 people, but maybe 7 or 8 people, where we can do 3 or 4 hours of training with them. We will help them get their Facebook and Instagram approvals.
Mm-hmm.
We will help them get verified on X or Truth. We will help them do all that. We have done that time and time again. We will help them with their treasurers. One of the things that we did last year is we changed our bylaws to allow town committee treasurers not to have to live in the town. So, because we have recommended to RTCs that it is in their best interest, because the filings have become so complicated with the state, that it is oftentimes in their best interest to hire a treasurer and pay them a small stipend to do their reports to the Elections Commission.
Has that carried through?
To do that,
Has that carried through? Has that change been made?
We have a number of towns now that that change was implemented last year. We have a number of towns that are using treasurers who are not from their town. We will recommend treasurers to people. We are doing treasurer training with the State Elections Commission, who will come in and help us train them to do that. We did moderator training this year, so we offered to our State Central members, and we're going to be offering it again next year to State Central and more town committees, where we will train people to be election day moderators that are hired by the registrars.
Sure.
Because we're hearing more and more from our Republican registrars is I can't find Republican moderators. And again, you don't have to live in the town to be a moderator in that town.
All right. Okay. Eric has a question
we're
here.
Doing more training.
Yeah, it's good.
Yep.
So Eric, what?
Yeah. So how would you explain what would be your explanation for, I think it was about a 6% disparity between Harris and Trump in the federal election? So you had a statewide. I think there was. What?
Yeah, there was a point I raised earlier, but we didn't get into it.
It was 47% for Trump and about 53% for Harris, and yet we lost all those seats in the state. So what would be your explanation for that?
Eric, if you were listening,
I think it's more of a 14-point disparity between Harris and Trump.
Okay.
I think and the final numbers it was roughly the same as it was in 2016. It was about 14%, I believe, was what the difference was.
Was there a higher percentage?
We were fully aware that Trump was going to do better in 24 than he did in 20. And look, one of the things that you need to look at, and I've begun to talk about this, is Harris got more votes than Hillary Clinton did in 16.
Yeah.
And she got more votes than Obama did in 12.
Did you?
Okay.
Obama, I think, got about 6,000 or 8,000 more votes than she did in 08. 2020 was an aberration on so many different levels because of COVID. I also think there's a real, and I'm not trying to stir up the stolen election piece of 2020, but the very fact that we mailed out applications and ballots to every voter in the state of Connecticut, and we have our voter list in Connecticut is an abomination. It is just horrible. There's no doubt about it. Because of the way our laws are set up, it's almost impossible for a registrar, particularly in a presidential year, to remove a dead person or someone who is moved from the voter list. Because under our laws, you cannot remove somebody from the list 90 days prior to an election. So in a presidential year, you have an election in April, the presidential preference primary. You then have an election in August for our statewide primaries, and then we have an election in November. So you literally can't remove somebody from the list prior to, if we're going the beginning of April, literally from the beginning of January through Election Day, it's almost impossible to remove someone from the voter list. So in 2020, the Secretary of State received back over 185,000 non-deliverable applications.
Yes, I remember that.
That begs the question of how many applications were delivered to an address where the person was dead or had moved, and somebody got it along with their own, and were then able to possibly put in 2 applications under 2 different names.
All right. Well, somebody
That's a
has the,
concern, and I can tell you,
somebody has the
so I
answer to
have
that
a
question,
meeting with-
right?
What's that?
Somebody has the answer to that question. Her name
Well,
is
somebody
Linda,
does, exactly.
Linda Sinkowitz.
So, and so I have a meeting with Secretary Thomas next month
Yeah.
to talk about changes that have to be made, or that we
Yeah.
think should be made
Yeah.
to our election laws. One of the primary changes that we need to make to our election laws is early voting. You must vote your ballot, not put it in an envelope, drop it in a box, and then have it counted on election night. We need to have tabulators at the early voting location. Just like you're going to vote. That's what early voting is. It's not absentee voting. It's early voting. And one of the changes I'm going to advocate for, and I think the Secretary is in favor of this based on my conversations, is that particularly now that we're going to be getting the new tabulators for next year,
Oh, really?
you come into early vote, you fill out your ballot, you put it in the machine, and it gets counted. Right then and there.
Yeah.
No
Well,
envelope, no signing the envelope, no putting it in a box, hoping it gets pulled out, and that will save towns money, because as you probably know, most towns were counting early votes and absentee votes past midnight on election night because there were so many of them.
yeah. Well, you're talking to a fan of paper ballots.
I love paper ballots.
Yeah. I think that's, what was it, 6%? Paper ballots are 60% of the cost of these electronic systems.
Yeah. Look, we're, and again, not trying to go back to the 2020 system, because I think 2020 was really an aberration for us when you look at the total number of votes that were cast. But the one thing about Connecticut that we do better than I think a lot of states on election is we are fully a paper system in Connecticut.
Right.
We have a paper ballot that gets put into a machine. That at the end of the night, we get a paper printout of the vote totals that we can see.
Yep, I've seen
All
that.
the ballots are available to be seen. When we count absentee ballots, they're actually looked at by a human being. They're put into a machine. The machines are not connected to the internet, so they can't be hacked. They're dumb machines. They just read bubbles, where we color in the bubbles. So I think we do that better than other places. I do think that, on our absentee ballot program, we do need to go to a signature verification program on our absentee ballots.
Yes, we're one of only nine. We're only one of 9 states that doesn't do signatures.
What would you think of the idea of when once a person casts their ballot, that they get a receipt for their ballot so that they can see who they vote?
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
I have no problem with that. If the machines, I know there's some machines that do that. I don't know if the new machines do that or not, but I have no problem with someone getting a receipt. You can go, and look, I also think, for instance, we really need to look at, on a statewide basis, going to electronic poll books. This concept of walk in and, cross a name off with with your pencil, the checkers, and God bless them who do it for 14 hours. I was an election official for 17 years before I became chairman. I was the deputy registrar in Stratford, and God bless our poll workers. Truly, they're amazing people with what they put up with. But to sit there, because how many times you have my dad who's been gone for a number of years, but when I was younger and I lived at home and I was a registered voter, he and I had the same name. I was a junior, he was a senior.
Right.
How easy was it if my dad walked in to vote and they inadvertently crossed my name off?
Yeah. Well, I have
and then I come in to vote and they say, well, no, you already voted. And that happens a lot. So if we go to electronic poll books, 1, it's a cleaner way for us to know who voted. 2, we know immediately who voted.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to having to wait until January to figure out who voted. That's another problem with our system.
I've usually been.
Until middle of
I usually get the
January
results.
to do that?
I usually manage to get the results a couple weeks after the election.
As to who voted, that's because you have a really good registrar. There are a lot of registrars that don't do it until January because the
Okay.
law says they don't have to do it till then.
Okay.
You know? I know, like, my registrar will have it all done by the end of the month. It'll all be done by the end of the month in Stratford, maybe the first week of December.
Yeah.
But there are some towns where they don't do it. Because remember, in many towns, Cort,
Yeah.
the registrar works 1 day a week.
Right. There's that. There's the funding issue, and then there's the other issue, aging out. What's the average age of registrars in Connecticut? I believe they're well into their 70s. Well into their 70s.
Probably at least into their upper 60s, because we've been getting some younger registrars in the last couple of cycles. But yeah, that's, you know, it's an older group. They're not technologically savvy. They're not comfortable with the technology because they don't use it, you know, on a regular basis. You know, I mean, most, you know, look, I'm part of the boomer generation. I know a lot of my friends have phones that they use for Facebook and texting, and that's it.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, I'll call that smart.
They don't understand the full capability and what they can do with that piece of technology, and it scares them in a lot of cases.
All right. Well, yeah, that's a whole other issue. So I guess the major thing I want to hit on, and we'll finish up here, is these two articles that were in the Connecticut Sentinel. I don't know if you're aware of them. One was about being 0 and 51, and the other was about the mythological Republican Party of Connecticut. You're not aware of these articles?
You know, it's funny. No, I haven't seen them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware of the, you know, the national, you know, the national elections. You know, the last time, you know, we won a congressional seat was, you know, 2006 with Chris Shays.
Right.
And that was our last congressional race. And look, there's a number of issues there. So the mythological Republican Party, well, that's interesting considering the Republicans control well over 100 town halls at the municipal level.
Okay.
People elect us to run their towns. They believe in our ability to run their towns, to manage their towns, manage their money. They'd rather have Republicans as mayors and first selectmen and on their city councils and board of aldermen and their board of education.
Right.
You know, so the concept of a mythical Republican Party is BS. Because we're running very strong in that regard. The question ultimately becomes is how do you take that and translate it to state house and state senate elections? Put the federal elections aside for a minute and just talk about the state house and state senate elections. There are a lot of times where, you know, you have very popular mayors or first selectmen who would be really good candidates and be really good legislators, but they really like being the mayor or first selectman. It puts them much closer to the people. It allows them to do more things, and in a lot of ways to have more impact on people's lives immediately, which is true. I mean, look, as part of the Republicans, we believe government that's closest to the people governs best, right?
Right.
So, you know, we run into some of that. So the Republican Party at the local level is very, very strong. When you look across the state, you know, at our state Senate and state House candidates, in particular our elected state House and state senators, we have a very strong caucus. Yes, we're small. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We're small. We're not Rhode Island small, thankfully, where I think they have 3 state senators. But we're small, but, you know, we're pretty potent in what we do up there. And it's going to be a little more difficult this time, but we have, you know, some very strong leadership in the House and the Senate. We have very strong leadership on our committee, you know, on the various legislative committees from our ranking members who work very hard. Look, you know, there's at the end of the day, the most important thing to winning an election is the candidate.
Sure.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is the candidate. And if we have a good candidate who's willing to go out and do the work, who's willing to put the time in, put the effort in, go out and meet people, go out and talk to people, we will do better. When we have candidates who get lazy and candidates who, you know, don't put the work in, it becomes more difficult. Yeah, and it's predictable. You know, look, one of the things I've said for many, many years, long before I became chairman, here is the biggest difference between Democrats and Republicans, particularly in the state of Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
For Democrats, politics is a vocation.
Yep.
It's how they make their living.
Mm-hmm.
It's how they put food on their table. It's how they put a roof over their children's head. Right? It's how they take care of their families.
Mm-hmm.
For Republicans, politics is an avocation.
Yep.
For the most part, it's our hobby because we have real jobs.
Right. No,
Right?
I've made the same observation.
We go to work
Yes.
right? We
Yeah.
go to work every day. We're whether we're a doctor or a lawyer, an architect, we're working in a factory, we're a real estate agent, we're a stay-at-home mom, a stay-at-home dad, real jobs. We have real jobs, real careers,
Mm-hmm.
and we go up to Hartford, and we do this as a citizen legislature, and we come home and we go to work.
Yeah.
There are two
Democrats make their living doing this.
there are two candidates that really
Right.
shouldn't have lost because they did put in the work, and those would be Cammie Evans in Westport and Todd Ladonia in Greenwich. So, do you have any explanation for them?
So I think the problem with, you're right, Cammie worked really, really hard. Cammie and I would talk on a regular basis. We know Todd, we were involved with some of Todd's stuff up in Hartford. We would see it and do some work. So let's talk about Cammie. The problem Cammie has, or who's ever running in that district, is it got gerrymandered so badly in 2020
Mm-hmm.
that when you look at it, the district is predominantly a Westport-Wilton district.
Mm-hmm.
That's predominantly that district.
Okay.
You then have Weston, which is a predominantly Democrat town. Westport, which, although it has a Republican first selectman, is predominantly Democrat
Right.
at the state level, has been for a long time, and which is one of the reasons why Tony Huang wanted out of Westport when they redistricted in 2020.
Yeah.
And Reading has become more Democratic over the years. And what's happened is we've seen, just before COVID and through COVID, the influx of New Yorkers and New Jersey and people from New Jersey coming into Connecticut, in particular into Fairfield County, into Litchfield County. And part of the problem is that when they come from these places, not only do they bring their furniture with them, they bring their politics with them.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
I've had conversations with people who have moved here from New York, and I'll ask them, well, why'd you leave New York? And they'll go on and on and on. And I say, well, then, why are you doing the same thing when you got here? If you thought it was so bad there, the Democratic Party was driving you nuts there, why are you coming here registering as a Democrat and voting for the Democrats? Well, your Democrats are different. I go, yeah, you're right. They're more crazy.
There
They're
you
more
go.
liberal. They're more
Good line.
progressive. Right?
Rim shot,
Right.
please. Okay.
Right.
Yes. Right.
Right? But it's true. And so that's been an issue. So that district, because it's got such a small piece of Darien, a small piece of Stamford, a small piece of New Canaan, and it only now has half of Richfield, when at one point it had all of Richfield, and Richfield and Wilton at one time were two powerhouse Republican towns that have switched, although, we have Tony Boucher in Wilton, who's the first select woman there, the former senator in that district.
Yeah.
But you look at Richfield, and you look at the influx of people into Richfield. At one point in time, Richfield was one of the most Republican vote-getting towns in the state.
Yeah.
It is now one of the most Democrat vote-getting towns.
Unbelievable.
Again,
Unbelievable.
by virtue of people who have moved into town, from New York, from New Jersey, from some of the other places. So there's been a at one point in time, Fairfield County was the Republican bastion of Connecticut.
Yep.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was the Republican bastion of Connecticut. That has now shifted to eastern Connecticut and the Naugatuck Valley.
Working class people.
That's where the Republicans.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Working class people. Right. Hardworking, good people. Look, I'm not putting down the people in Fairfield County. They're good people. They're hardworking people, but different kinds of work and different kinds, very different economic situation, very different income situation, and in many cases, very different upbringing situations. Again, neither being bad or good, just different. And so we've seen that shift to eastern Connecticut. And look, you look up in northeastern Connecticut, Donald Trump won Windham County.
Right.
Donald Trump ran very competitively in Middlesex County and in Collin County. New London County, not so much. And that's where we lost two of our state reps was in New London County. And that was really, really hard. One of those legislators probably should not have run again. She ran much too close 2 years ago, but she wanted to go one more time, and it kind of caught up with her. Eventually, it will catch up to you. So when you look at where the shift has been from, the Republican base, it has shifted from Fairfield County and Litchfield County, where the old Yankee farmers were, to eastern Connecticut and the Naugatuck Valley, what I basically call east of the tunnel and north a little bit.
Yeah.
You look at Litchfield County, all the old farms up in Litchfield County, which were old, for generations, farmers, old Yankee Republicans, their kids didn't want to be farmers.
Right.
But their kids are sitting on $10 million worth of real estate.
Sure.
Right?
But
what are they
they're
doing?
Democrats.
They're selling it off. Who are they selling it to? They're selling it to New Yorkers. They're selling it to people from New Jersey. They're selling it to, the celebrity elites that are moving into Litchfield County. And so we're seeing a demographic shift there. And, how do you deal with that demographic shift? And I think, people have asked me, what do I think is going to happen in 2026? Is Donald Trump going to help us or hurt us in 2026? And I said, look, first of all, it's a midterm, so we always kind of know what happens in midterms with the party in power. But I do think Donald Trump shifts the historical narrative on that. And if Donald Trump does what he said he was going to do, if he can get the economy inflation under control, if he can get the border under control, if he can stop the flow of fentanyl and opioids into this country, if he can get us energy independent again, suddenly we have a real opportunity in 2026 to capitalize on the gains that we're getting out of Washington with the Trump administration. If he fails to do that, and I don't think he's going to, I think he's going to succeed, then it becomes more problematic for us. So, you can't really look at the crystal ball in that way, but you have to, and you look at, people that he's beginning to put in place, people who are going to be disruptors. And that's something we haven't had in Washington in a long time. We haven't had disruptors in Washington. We've had status quo people on both sides of the aisle. Didn't matter who was in charge, right? We all kind of went along to get along kind of thing.
True.
And he's putting people who are going to disrupt that status quo. And it's going to be hard at the beginning because disruption is always difficult for people and change always becomes difficult. But ultimately, I think it will be the right thing. And I think if he does what he's talked about doing, that over these next 2 years, we're going to be in a really good position in 2026.
All right, two final questions. Do you have anything on Todd Ladonia to say about why his campaign didn't do too well? And I guess the last question would be, do you see yourself continuing as the chair for the RTC or making any other career moves?
Well, the second question that will be up to the state central members as to what direction they want to go in. I've been doing a lot of work trying to get us into a position for 2026, and when you begin to do things, you want to obviously see them through. But that will be up to the 74 members of the State Central Committee as the direction they want to go in, and I have a lot of confidence in our members to make good choices. As far as the Ladonia race, I know I was on the phone this afternoon with some folks in Greenwich about that. There's some issues they're finding with some of the vote tallies that are not making sense. So I've asked them to pull some the tapes from all of the machines in Todd's district, as well as the head moderator returns from all of the districts in Todd's district, to send them up to us so we can have our folks go through those numbers and see if there are any discrepancies or if there's anything that doesn't look right, that we may be able to come back and say, hey, there's a problem here. So we're gonna take a look at that. Look, Todd worked really hard. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I know he knocked on pretty much every door. He had a great campaign. He ran a strong campaign. And like any, in any contest, somebody wins and somebody loses. He ran against an incumbent. Oftentimes the incumbent has a bit of an advantage, given their incumbency, given their ability over the 2 years prior to use, franked mail that the taxpayers pay for to send out really what are political, mailers, even though they're not supposed to be, touting how great the legislator is and all the great things that he's done for Greenwich and all the wonderful things they're going to do. And the taxpayers pay for that. And that's on both sides. Again, I'm not just knocking the Democrats on that. Our guys do the same thing because they're entitled to it. They're allowed to do it by law. So beating incumbents is very difficult. I think, one of the things, I would strongly urge Todd to do is not go away. One of the mistakes that we often make when we lose races, particularly when we lose close races, is we get a different candidate the next time, as opposed to looking at somebody like Todd and saying, stay in this for the next 2 years, be involved, write letters to the editor, be involved at, the local level, be involved at the state level. If there's a bill out there that you believe in or you think is a problem, go testify on it and tell people you did that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Get it out there, put it out on social media, put it out. Sometimes you got to spend a little bit of your own money. Hey, just want you to know that, I just testified on this guppy farm bill because I think it's really important for the town of Greenwich that we increase our guppy farming capabilities in Greenwich. And that's why I went up there and I testified on it. And I want you to know that, my opponent, he opposed that bill. He opposed that guppy farming bill, even though it would be good for Greenwich. We start too late, oftentimes. And that's one of the conversations I've had with Vin Candelora and Stephen Harding, who are the two leaders, that this is a 24/7, 365-day-a-year political operation. Yeah. When a legislator on the Democratic side makes a bad vote, we need to tell people in their district they made a bad vote when they make it, not a year and a half later when we're running an election campaign, because nobody cares a year and a half later. Yeah. You have to build that momentum. You have to build that opposition to the incumbent because they continue to make bad votes. Right. If you don't tell people about it, nobody knows what goes on up in Hartford because it's so far away. Yeah. And the local reporting and the statewide political reporting has really taken, a hammering over the last decade, where you really don't know what's going on. Well,
they're just, anymore. As far as I'm concerned, they're just lapdogs for the liberals. Yeah. So.
In a lot of cases, they are.
Yeah. All right. So. Yeah. So on that happy note, I think we need to close. And Ben, I really appreciate you taking the time with us.
Anytime, Cort. I'm happy to do it. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. Later.
Where does this run, Cort?
We'll send him a link.
Yeah, we'll send you the link later.
Okay, great. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Do you have my email?
The chairman at CT. Right?
No. Ben at ct.gop.
Okay. All right. Got it.
All right.
All right. Thanks again.
Great. Cort,
all right.
Appreciate your time. Eric, thank you so much.
Yep.
All right.
Have
All right.
a good night.
All right. Good night.